most of what's left into a cheap index fund that mirrors the S&P 500. That's for retirement. So, you're getting your stimulus check from the government, right? I mean, what do you do? What do you do with it? Before we even talk about investing, you gotta plug some holes. You gotta pay off your credit card debt. Maybe you gotta make sure you got some health insurance. I know, really boring advice, but those costs can eat you alive. Once that's covered, you should put most of what's left into a cheap index fund that mirrors the S&P 500. That's for retirement. And then finally, there's your... So, you're getting your stimulus check from the government, right? I mean, what do you do? What do you do with it? Before we even talk about investing, you gotta plug some holes. Gotta pay off your credit card debt. Maybe you gotta make sure you got some health insurance. I know, really boring advice, but those costs can eat you alive. Once that's covered, you should put most of what's left into a cheap index fund that mirrors the S&P 500. That's for retirement. And then finally, there's your mad money, a fitting concept given that today is indeed our 16th anniversary. And otherwise, a daily positive session, Dow ultimately advancing 175 points. Oh, it traded all over the place, but then nicely, S&P gaining 0.65%, and then NASDAQ climbing 1.05%. Well, you're probably thinking, why doesn't Cramer say start with individual stocks? Because if you qualify for a stimulus check, you might not have enough money for cushion. I always tell you to put your first 10 grand into an index fund because you start picking stocks or assets like cryptocurrencies. Well, you know what? I've been saying for a decade and a half, you got to be diversified. And that's what the pulpit's about. Be diversified. But let's say you got that cushion. What's next? All right, well, your choice of investments depends on where you are in life. And to a lesser extent, your own personality, which I can't tell you about. I mean, if you're young and you got a whole lifetime of paychecks ahead of you, you can afford to take on a lot more risk, assuming you're comfortable with it. As you get older, you do need to be more cautious. It's just what life's about. In the old days, I would tell you to pick the stock of a company you knew and liked and read the annual report, listen to the quarterly conference call, look up any relevant articles, and maybe do some buying if you like what you see. Very often, though, people would balk because the share price was too high, meaning it cost too many dollars, and because there are a lot of commissions. These days, there's no longer a problem because we got fractional trading. You can buy a tenth of something like Tesla or Amazon or Alphabet and no commissions. Now, the younger you are, the more I'm begging you to take an aggressive stance on something speculative. What does that mean? Let me give you textbook examples because we've got them all over the place. A year ago, Moderna was speculative. It was a relatively untested biotech company. Now we know they've had incredible success with their COVID vaccine. You know what? I don't believe their RNA technology extends beyond this one virus. Stocks had a huge run. You know what? I actually think you can still justify owning a piece of it up here because management has staked out a series of vaccination efforts that could lead to being multiple blockbusters. But how about if you're older? Well, then I think you got to switch gears. Then I think you got to try a stock like Johnson & Johnson. It's a company with a long track record of paying dividends, done some remarkable work with its own one-shot COVID vaccine, although not that it's necessarily a needle mover. J&J doesn't have the radical upside of something like Moderna. In fact, they're not even trying to make money on the vaccine. But the company has a tremendous history of doing right by its shareholders, managing its capital well, and developing new drugs.
Don't miss a second of Mad Money. Follow @JimCramer on Twitter. Have a question? Tweet Kramer. #MadTweets. Send Jim an email to madmoney@cnbc.com or give us a call at 1-800-743-CNBC.